Hey, welcome to Mooney Reads. My name is Beck, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I plan on reading in the month of March. Now, I'm definitely going to be prioritizing the books that I started or worked on reading last month, but I do have a fair number of other ones that I want to read. I like making lists, so here we are. There are several readathons that I'd like to participate in. It's Women's History Month, so the Women's History Month readathon is going on. Middle Grade March is also going on, as well as the March of the Mammoths and Buzzwordathon, and then there are a few that are throughout only parts of the month. So I'll go through and talk about each of those. For March of the Mammoths, I only have one book. The goal of this readathon is to focus on a book that is 800 pages or more. I am not starting a book, nor will I probably finish it, but I do hope to work on Sontag by Benjamin Moser. I've talked about this a lot. It's Susan Sontag's biography. I'm not going to finish it anytime soon, but I'm at least going to work on it. We'll see how it goes. In theory, the goal would be to focus on it a lot, but my brain has not been cooperating, so I'm not even sure why I'm bothering with the TBR at all, to be honest. But that's fine. Next, we have Women's History Month. The Women's History Month readathon has a really nice bingo board, and I've got some books that fit several of these prompts. For non-Western fantasy and something that has a name in the title, I'm going to be reading Lelani in the Distant Sea by Erin Entrada Kelly. This is based on Filipino folklore, which is why it's a non-Western fantasy. Hopefully that fits. I'm pretty sure this person is from the United States, but since it's based off of Filipino folklore, I went with it. This is a middle grade book, and basically after this person's mother falls sick, she has to go on this journey that adult men haven't even been able to go on. So this is kind of her story. You'll see this come up in my TBR again because it also fits for middle grade March. Another book that I'm reading for the Women's History Month readathon that fits a book that has themes of sisterhood, family. I'm including community in with this as well. And it's by an Indigenous author. And that is A Gathering of Spirit, which is a collection of essays written by Native American women talking about that experience. It was published in the 80s. Not really sure what it's like. I ran across it in a list of maybe a couple months ago. It seems interesting. So I'm going to be reading that. I think it also fits the prompt with fewer than 1,000 reviews on Goodreads too. The next book that I have is less than 200 pages and has been added to my TBR within the last 3 months, and that is Susan Sontag's Regarding the Pain of Others. I already mentioned that I'm hopefully going to be working on Susan Sontag's biography. These are some of her essays, and this is looking at how people talk about death, war, genocide, etc. I've read a couple of her other essays looking at illness and how people with illnesses are treated. It was really interesting, so I'm looking forward to reading her other stuff. Next, I have a book that is a biography or memoir written by a woman, and a book with a woman of color on the cover, which I suppose A Gathering of Spirit also had. But I'm going to be continuing to work on Assata. So this is going to be one of my priority books since I've already started it. If you don't know, Assata was involved in the Black Panther Party and was framed for killing a police officer. And this goes back and forth between her time in jail and the rest of her life, looking at her experiences. Then the final book that I have on my Women's History Month TBR is a book with fewer than 1,000 reviews and kind of fits the woman of color on the cover prompt. And this is Breaking the Walls of Silence, which again I started reading last month, so this is one of my priorities. This looks at the experience of the women who put together the AIDS counseling and education program in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. This, actually all of them, because I'm non-binary, would fit Own Voices for an identity that is not your own. So that's my Women's History Month readathon TBR. So Middle Grade March in general is just an initiative that happens that's encouraging people to read more middle grade. One of my goals this year was actually to read at least one middle grade per month, which I don't think happened in February. Not a lot happened in February, so it's understandable, honestly. But there are some people who have also put together prompts. I'll put the announcements for their readathon in the description. Their group book is The Brave by James Bird, which is one that I've seen in the bookstore that I work at and have wondered about and stuff like that. So if I get to it, I definitely want to listen to this audiobook. It's available on Hoopla. And this looks at a boy who has OCD and is sent, he typically lives with his father, but he's sent to live with his mother who lives on a reservation. But the first prompt outside of that is a book with a silhouette on the cover. And for that, I hope to listen to the audiobook of Coraline by Neil Gaiman. You probably know what Coraline is. I honestly don't have that much of a grip on what it's on. I know that it involves a girl that basically finds, like, this shadow world, sort of. The main thing that comes to my mind are the people with the buttons for eyes. I haven't seen the movie either. I've just seen people talk about it, and I've seen little bits. So I'm looking forward to reading the book. I know the main thing isn't technically a silhouette, even though it's the character's kind of in the shadows, but there's a silhouette in the title, so I'm using that. It was surprisingly hard to find a middle grade with a silhouette that was available on Hoopla as an audiobook, because the only things I can manage to read on there are graphic novels. And I also didn't see any graphic novels with silhouettes, so hopefully that will be good. Prompt number 2 is a book with a strong family element, and for that, I'm going to be rereading a book, The Deep and Dark Blue by Nikki Smith. I read this last year and really liked it. It's a fantasy graphic novel that focuses on these twins who have to go into hiding after there is an attempted coup. They are a part of the aristocracy, and they end up hiding in a convent. They have to pretend to be girls, to be nuns, and one of the twins ends up finding their place there, whereas the other one is ready to get out. Definitely a boy, definitely does not want anything to do with any of this. So it's got like a fantasy kind of adventure-y element to it, but it's also a trans coming out story. And it's a trans coming out story that does not rely on pain and trauma. I had a lot of feelings about it reading it the first time, and one of the reasons I'd like to reread it is because I want to make a whole video on it. So hopefully you can look forward to that. The next prompt for Middle Grade March is a book with a journey or an adventure. And for that, I'm going to be reading Princess Ever After by Kay O'Neill. And this is a story of princess trapped in a tower who is saved by another princess. And then they go on the adventure and maybe find their happily ever after. This is another graphic novel. There's actually another book by Kay O'Neill that I want to read that is another graphic novel, The Tea Dragon Society. So if I continue to be in the mood for graphic novels, I'm definitely going to be reading that one. And it technically fits prompt number 4, which is a retelling or a book with fairy tale elements. Dragons are clearly fairy tale elements. But the book that I had initially put on this list is Lelani in the Distant Sea, because it's based on Filipino folklore, so it would count as a retelling. Prompt number 5 is a book that was published the decade you were born. And for that, I've got another book that I'm going to reread, Maniac by Jerry Spinelli. Now, this book I have not read since 4th grade. That is when I read it, and I remember really enjoying it. The premise, from my recollection, is that there's this boy who is an orphan, and he basically just spends all of his time running. He doesn't have a home, but he's going back and forth and everywhere, and one of the places that he is in and goes back and forth within is a segregated neighborhood, and he's kind of the only person who goes on both sides of the neighborhood. So I'm going to reread this, and see how well it holds up. This was published in 1990. I was born in 1993, so it is within that decade. And then I have an extra book that doesn't really fit any of the prompts, but if I can, I'd really like to read it. It's another nostalgia read. Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH. I loved the Secret of NIMH movie. It was pretty scary, like, as a kid, all the rats with, like, the red eyes and stuff. But I never did read the book that it was based on, and I would like to do that. And then outside of all of these readathons, I am still doing my buddy read of Captive Genders with Brianna from Rad Reads, so this is one that is high on the priority list. Now, the Buzzwordathon is something that's going on all year round, and I have a book picked for it. It's another that I started last month. The word for March is time. So I would like to finish This Is How You Lose the Time War. However, I've already discussed that my brain has not been working the way that I would like it to. I've actually got a few other books that are more like poetic and kind of like driven by metaphor. 30 Names of Night is one of them, and then I've also got a poetry collection that I'm in the middle of, and for some reason my brain is just not doing those. So if I get my shit together, I'm gonna finish This Is How You Lose the Time War, but if I don't get my shit together, that might not happen, but that's fine. But this will hopefully, this is on, I'm putting this on my TBR just in case. Now, the other readathons that are going on, from the 18th to the 27th, the sequel-a-thon is happening. And for that, I hope to get to A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor by Hank Green. I read An Absolutely Remarkable Thing in December, and it was excellent. I really, really loved it. I love Hank, like, as a person, and his book was really great, so hopefully I can get to the sequel. And then from the 27th through the 28th is the Queer Weekend. Now for that, there's a day of overlap, and I know the main character in An Absolutely Remarkable Thing was bisexual, so technically working on that could work for the Queer Weekend. At least half of the books that I've talked about could actually work for the Queer Weekend. So I'm pretty sure I'm set for that. I don't think I need to add anything else. There are a couple of other things that I've honestly kind of got my eye on. I'm in the middle of reading a few different manga series, so you might see more manga too, especially since graphic novels have really been getting my, keeping my attention more than anything else. But this is it for my official TBR. If you've read any of these, definitely let me know what you thought about them in the comments. And thank you all so much for watching. Bye.